Hey there, my friends. This is Bill MacDonald. If you teach reading, editing, revising, writing, math, social studies, or science, then this video is for you. What you're trying to do starting next year is to help your kids learn how to get 1 point based on the new constructed type responses and how to turn ones to twos if you're a ninth grade English end of course 1 or 10th grade English end of course 2 teacher. This video is going to be for you. So if you know someone who teaches reading, writing, editing, revising, math, social studies, or science, this will be an important video to share with them so they can learn how to start understanding questions to make sure they can get 1 point for sure when it's multiple choice, and how to not get worried or too stressed out if it's the new item types that will be starting next year. And if you're a retester testing in December, how to go from a 1 and a 1, that's 2 times 2 is 4, to a 2 and a 2 times 2 is 8. So if you've been failing the English 1 or 2 test by 4 points or less, and you've been getting zeros or ones on your essays, or a 1 and a 2, I'm going to show you how to make sure that you can get 2 points by finding something. All you need is examples or reasons in expository or persuasive. Even if it's just a list, you can turn ones to twos, and sometimes you need to work on convention. So here we go. Let's take a look. I want to share with you my screen. First, we'll share the document that has been given to us by the state. And this is on one of my earlier posts last month or the month before for reading language arts teachers and social studies teachers. There's hot text, math, reading language arts, social studies, inline, where there's a drop down menu, math, reading language arts or science, text entry, where you have to enter a number, a word, or phrase, at least a string of text. The short constructed response is the open-ended to get a point. All of these are worth 1 point, where you have to give a brief explanation in your own words. That means it might have to be a phrase. And I would recommend that you, on this kind, that you teach them to write in a complete sentence if you teach reading language arts, science, or social studies. The math grid, match table grid, I'm sorry, is you have to take a look at something, a table or a grid that's been given to you in math, reading language arts, or social studies, and be able to match the answer you choose to the grid that's been given. Page 2. In math, reading language arts, science, and social studies, in all 4 areas, there's going to be multi-select, which means that there's more than one correct answer to a question. So in the old days, where it was only A, B, C, or D, or F, G, H, or J, it could be A and B, or A and C. Multi-part. In reading language arts, science, and social studies, it's dependent on each other. The answer to part B is dependent on part A. For reading language arts, one example would be the cause and effect relationship. The effect depends on the cause, the compare and the contrast, the conflict versus the resolution, the pros and the cons. The answer to part B is dependent on part A. And so in science, it might be a predator-prey relationship. In social studies, it might be a historical event, what cause and effect of a specific historical event in Texas or the United States or the world. Drag and drop. And basically, it's going to be sort of like multiple choice because all you're going to be doing is dragging your response, words, numbers, symbols to an area that they determine where it belongs. Basically, if it's a drag and drop, it's going to be from a drop down menu basically, and you'll be it's sort of like having an A, B, C, and D already listed, and you grab one of the responses and put it in the spot where it belongs. The hotspot, one or more specific areas of a graphic. So you'll highlight or mark that area with your computer mouse. Graphing, so only in math, and I have already done this in my new 3rd and 4th grade, where the students have to make their own graph instead of looking at 4 graphs that are given and giving the right one. Also in math, a problem that I'm going to work on tonight with third grade and 4th grade is the student's going to have to look at some fractions and look at an inequality, and they'll have to make their own inequality based on a two sets of fractions that they're going to see. Now, the list that you just saw is on my new advanced writing folders. If you get a copy of these, the digital copy or the hard copy, you can laminate them. That way the student can check off if they're getting one of those kinds of questions, or that short response was just worth 1 point. What is the question? Red light. What is the answer? Red light. In order to get a 1, all I have to do is answer the question in one of these ways, or in a sentence like it said on one of the choices. The exact words were, a student would have to give a brief explanation in their own words to demonstrate their understanding of content. So in order to get to 1 land, so it said it could be in reading language arts, it could be in reading. That means because editing and revising will be part of the reading as a field test this year and as part of the real test next year, they could ask your kids a conventions question from editing, or a content in terms of development and organization question with revising. Now, let's make life very simple for all of you so that the kids and yourself will not panic. Get a regular white sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, fold it in half. What I've done right here, I've folded the paper in half, and I wrote something on one side, so I want to make sure I use the other side. Now, all we're trying to do on this first part of the video is, I have a 0 right now, and I need to be able to figure out, how do I make sure that I get that 1 point with the short answer or one of the new question types? So they're going to ask us a question, and it's going to be about a certain TEK. It's going to be about a certain topic, and depending on the subject that you teach, it's going to be a question, a TEK, a topic from your subject area. And as you saw, every single tested subject is going to have at least 25% of these kinds of questions starting next year. So notice that I'm using red. So I suggest that you use red, and I put that little circle. How do I turn a 0 into a 1? Well, what I'm going to ask you to do is think of a pizza. They normally slice them into 8 parts. So at 12 and 6, I drew 2 oval shapes. At 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, I am drawing 2 more. And when they slice the pizza, they put it into 8 slices normally. So I'm going to put one around 1:30 and 7:30, and we'll put one at 4:30 and one at 10:30, basically dividing the 12 hours into 8 parts. Now, the first kind of question, and they're always going to be, no matter what subject we're talking about, it's going to be a who question. Let's do the 5 W's. A what question, when, where, and why. So you want to get your students used to understanding which one of the basic 5 W's they're asking. And in the old days for 4th grade, those were the only topics, the prompts that were given were based on the 5 W's. Write about one person you admire. That was a who. Who do you admire? Write about something that you would like to do in the future. What would you like to do in the future? Write about one reason you like 4th grade. Why do you like 4th grade? Write about your favorite time of year. When is your favorite time of year? Write about your favorite place. Where? And out of all the years of STAR, every single one was based on one of the 5 W's. Okay. The 9th grade prompt asked a why. The 10th grade prompt, persuasive, asked a why question. Why does blah, 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 whether or not you believe why something happens. The 9th grade was a how. And even though that doesn't start with a W, it ends with a W, how does something cause lead to something effect? So they could ask a how question in all subjects, who, what, when, where, why. They could ask, because of multi-part, which. They could ask a cause and effect. They can ask you to pick from some items. Remember, it could be multi-part, so it could be one item, it could be 2 items, it could possibly be 3 items. Which, who, what, when, where, which, who, what, when, where, why, which, how. And because I'm also talking to 10th grade teachers, write about whether or not something, in 10th grade, they have to take a position on something, and then they have to say why they believe that. So if this is going to be the types of questions that they could ask us, then that 0, just repeating the question but not answering it, it's going to stay a 0. So let's make the rest of the flower. And if I was talking in the old days to 4th grade teachers, the answer to the prompt was their central idea statement, their person. Write about the importance of something. Write about, one of the last years for 4th grade was write about the best way to learn. What is the best way to learn? That was the last 7th grade prompt, and they called that the controlling idea statement. If we're talking about 9th grade, which is going to be tested this December, your thesis statement. This is my thesis. And so there's even a T right there. My thesis statement is the answer to the question. And if it's a 2-part prompt, then I need a 2-part thesis statement in order to have a good chance to get at least the 1. In 10th grade, it's called a position statement. I have to take this position or the other one if they give me an option, and they usually do. It's whether this or that is true. You pick one or the other and then stick with it and prove, spend like the entire paper proving that. But for all 3rd through 8th and even 9th and 10th starting next year, all you have to do to turn that 0 into 1 is answer the question, not just restate the words of the question, but actually answer the question with some words. And so the question has been asked to me, do I have to use the exact word? No, you can rephrase the question. You're going to see in a moment some kids got lower scores because all they kept doing was repeating the prompt over and over. So keeping that in mind, let me come out and I'm going to come back in and I'm going to show you something in the binder. Many of you have my binder. So I'm going to look at page 284 first. This is my medicine, or what I would call surgery, if, let me share the screen instead of doing it that way. Share the screen. I'm going to share a portion of the screen. Let's see which one I'm going to be sharing. I'm going to be sharing this one right here. Okay. So this was a student that got a 1 that they asked him, and this is on page 284 of the binder. And so what I did was I showed you and your students in the binder, if you have a 1, how do I turn a 1 to a 2? And what happened here was the student started by saying his or her favorite time of year being winter and mentioning hot cocoa, which is a great reason to like winter. Snowball fights, that's a great reason. But the rest of the essay, they just wrote a story. And they don't want a story about something that happened to you one time. They want you to explain your examples that you gave of hot cocoa and snowball fights, because they're just only those first 4 lines had to do with responding to the prompt. So that wouldn't even really be an expository, like half and half. It would be basically a story because only 5 lines out of the 25, sorry, 4 lines had anything to do. So what I recommend that you do is, instead of starting from scratch, go to the binder and use the pages that I've provided so that you can ask what I call the right questions. If your students were to answer 2, 3, or 4 of these questions, this 1 could turn into a 2. What is your favorite time of year? If I asked you that question, when is your favorite time of year? That would be the question. It was basically a when question. And if I was to turn the page forward, I'm sorry, let me show you the essay. That was the essay, and that's a lot of quantity. They filled up 25 out of 26 lines, but quantity isn't necessarily quality. And so what I did was, for the 4 papers that got a 1, the state explains in the scoring guides to adults why those papers got 1s. What you want to make sure that your kids understand is, what does all that mean? Well, what I do in the binder, after each essay that got a 1 for elementary, I go ahead and show, basically, here's an outline of what the student wrote on the top portion. Apparently, this kid got a lower grade because instead of having 1 idea, 1 time of year, they had August, December, and July, and they basically told a little bit about August. And so basically they did not have a clear answer to the question. There were 3 different answers. And so if you're going to be giving me 3 ideas, then you've got to explain all 3 ideas with 3 reasons and 3 examples of those reasons. And so it's too hard in the lines that you have to get a 2 if all you're doing is giving me a list like this one. The next one, they did the same thing as the first essay. I like summer, I can play on my trampoline. And so what you could have done was ask lots of questions like the ones that are listed there about the trampoline. What's so cool about the trampoline? Reason. In the summer, idea. What's so interesting about playing football? Reason. In the summer, the time of year. Know you know. That kind of is not a great way to end. So I did the same thing for the other two. This third one got a 1 because you can see I went ahead and wrote every single line, the spelling. If the spelling is so bad on the essays responses, your students are going to get a lower grade based on 3 things. Is your paper organized? Did you answer the question? Give you 1. Did you give textual evidence? 2. Did you develop your answer on the essay questions? 3. Those are the ways to get a 3. But it does say that in order to get the 3, you have to have somewhat reasonable conventions as well. And so this paper, as you can see here, had so many spelling errors. If I was going to give it a 2, it probably would have gotten a 1 on essay because of the spelling errors that you see here. If I was going to give it a 3, it might have still gotten a 1 because if the spelling errors are so bad that it's hard to make your way through it, the conventions are not there. So if you spell the letters D-O-C, it spells DOC, Development Organization Conventions. And if you cross out that C of DOC, all you have left is do. Papers without good conventions are doo-doo. And I know that's kind of corny, but for you people that are trying later on to get 3s, 3s will turn into 1s or possibly 0s if the conventions on the essay responses and the expository 9th grade, persuasive 10th grade are so bad where we can't even understand them. So I'm going to jump ahead now to page 318 because we might have some secondary teachers here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit bigger so you can see this prompt. It says, whoops, went too far down there. Make sure that you understand the topic. The third section is the right section. So you guys that are 9th grade teachers trying to help kids, the importance of never giving up. So either why should I just give up? Why should I not give up? It could be right about whether or not it's okay to give up. And if your students pick 1, never give up and give an idea. They just have to tell you why they believe that in order to get that 1 and give some examples in order to turn it into a 2. And I did the same thing for 7th grade on pages 300, what was that, 318 all the way. And I did it all the way from a 1 through a 4. It basically helps you, the teacher, put what the essay has on the bottom written for a teacher in almost like a foreign language to students in simple terms. That essay right there is here. And I ask, again, what I call the right questions that will help this 1 turn into a 2. And what's going to happen, your 4 points of expository or persuasive will turn into 2 to 8 points if you can remember to give reasons and examples. Last thing I want to show you is one from this past year. This past year that said to the 9th graders, you guys are retesting in December, write an essay explaining how, there's the one of the who, what, when, where, which, who, what, when, where, why, which, how, and whether, the 8 little petals on the flower. How does receiving support from others help you achieve success? That's one of those 2-part questions that they're asking. And so because the question is in two parts, because the question is like the prompt, the answer has to be in two parts. So in this case, part B will be their answer, and it has to respond to both the support they received from others and how it's going to achieve success or not. So really quickly, the four papers that were there, I'll show them to you briefly. Sometimes we just really need help of others. That's the prompt. But we need time too. Okay. So we can admitting it, because at the same time we don't want to accept the help of other people. We need help, but we don't want to. I think that when we need some help, we have to ask others for it, because that way maybe we make the things more easy. But we have to start accepting when you need help and ask for it. When you receive support from others, you feel better, caring, and not stressing or stuff like. And then they stopped in the middle of a sentence. So if you're going to ask for help, if that's talking about asking for help, what I would need would be either a reason that asking for help is going to be a good idea, or an example, in what real life situation could I ask for help. And if you notice, so all the kids who got the one were all too vague. They weren't specific enough. They got enough to get the one because they found things about the prompt and a little bit more, but nothing beyond what I call a vague response. Receiving help from others can help you achieve success, because sometimes you will ask questions to better understand what you are doing. Okay, so what you are doing, I'm going to zoom in on that. And when you're talking about what you're doing, do they say what we're doing? No. There's a million things that I could be doing. So if you're one of those teachers who has kids who really struggle, once you have them write something like that, they immediately should follow that by, for example, doing something and then explaining how asking help with something that I'm doing is going to make me more successful in the end. And that one can turn into a two. And if two people give you a two, then you could end up getting a four on the next one. Thanks for your patience on this. Have you ever that about helping others and an occasion, for example, when someone something down, and instead of laughing, you would go up to her and help her out? So since that part was confusing, anything that's indecipherable hurts the quality of the paper. Another reason, I don't even know what the first reason was, is that that always happens to me. I want to help, but sometimes I can't, because maybe they're personal problems or things you can't imagine. It hard not trying to help other people that need it. Again, I would zoom in real quick on, I would probably zoom in, if you zoom in and say, okay, your big idea, we'll say the one that we want to turn green is personal problems. So you could box that in and say, give me an example of some personal problems that someone might have, or that you have, that people could help with. That was too vague, so the state just gave a one. There's nothing specific about that. If I had a bunch of other examples, then maybe they would sometimes get a two, but since there's only one example and it wasn't explained, it was too vague. And this essay has a lot of grammar problems, so it's too hard to understand. The next one, and my big idea on these first four lessons, parts one and parts two, is to make sure that Those of you who are retesting in December know how to turn zeros to ones, and this video how to turn ones to twos. Sometimes people need help even if they don't want to admit it. That's a great thesis statement or a controlling idea because at least they added something or think they can do it by themselves. So because that's part of your thesis, you need to make sure you mention people having problems but not really wanting to fess up. So let's see if that person does it or not. But asking for help might lead to success, especially if you're having trouble. Let me go ahead and I'm gonna this time make my line a little bit thicker. You're having trouble doing something. Okay, again, if we're having trouble, that's great. We're going to draw, making sure that I'm clicking on the right things here. If you're having trouble doing something, that's their idea. And one reading program says, box and explode. Find their idea that you can work with. You're having trouble doing something. Do we know what the something is? No. So all I got to do is think of all the things in the world that I have trouble doing. And if I can give an example and explain how asking for help on that, and we have to keep in mind because our idea was I didn't want to admit that I need help because I think I can do it by myself. Explain at least a little bit when you're having trouble. Why is it that you don't want anybody to know? I have trouble with exercising when it comes to my heart rate. I do lots of exercises with my biceps and my triceps and my stomach and my legs, but I don't want to get up and make my heart rate go. And so I don't want anybody to, I want people to see that I've got big muscles, but I don't want them to know that I have a bad heart, that I won't take care of my cardio. And so what I'm trying to do there is explain what is something I'm having trouble with. Or you can talk to the reader if you're worried about them telling a story. You can say, let's say you're having trouble in a relationship, talking to the reader that you could do this and you could do that. Now I know what I'm having trouble with. You might not want anybody to know because on social media, it looks like every relationship is going perfectly. And so you don't want anybody to know that yours is struggling and you think, oh, I can solve this. I can figure this out. I don't need anybody's help. Well, writing some of that would have turned this one land into two land. Okay. And it says there you're going to be afraid or embarrassed to ask for help. Well, maybe you could write about just tell one person, someone that you trust, because that's a great idea, but they didn't support it with anything. And so that's why that paper, as well as the other ones, ended up getting a 1. So try to give an example. So if you think of these 3 letters, I'm going to type something here. I'm going to do it way over here. Make sure I spell it correctly for you guys. Capitals. GPS. Okay. GPS is a navigational system that allows you to get from point A to point B. But when I say GPS, all I'm trying to say is to get pretty specific. Okay. And the first way to get pretty specific, I'm going to show you something pretty cool here. I'm going to clear all the drawings, move myself out of the way. I'm hoping that you can see the word expository there. Undo, clear all my drawings, click on mouse. Sorry, I'm having to talk to myself. The word expository starts with EXP. So I have my idea, my thesis. You can see, I'm going to use the spotlight so you can see what I'm talking about. I have my idea called my thesis or my position if we're doing persuasive. And if you can give me an EX, an example, or an ORY, or at least one reason why, if I can give reasons or examples, I can usually turn ones to twos, because the second bullet says to organize and develop. Well, before I can develop something, I have to organize it. And so what you want to teach your kids to turn those ones to is make them give you reasons and make you give examples. In future tense, for you teachers that are going to have to try and get twos, the red light that we've talked about in one of our videos was answering the question. The yellow light was giving textual evidence. Where can, in the text, where in the selection, the poem, the play, the informational text, where in the passage can you find something that's written to support your answer, and why? And so red light was W for what is the answer. The yellow light was W for where is the answer, and possibly why did you choose that answer. And what we talked about here in the essays, you can also get a 2 if you can give examples. Examples. Give 1 or 2 examples that explain what you mean. Having trouble with something, having problems with something, at least give an example of what you mean. Even if you don't get specific, your 1 can turn into a 2 by giving reasons and examples. So there you have it. Remember, our goal for you teachers that are in all subjects is make sure they know how to get that 1 point using the 7 W's plus 1, because how ends with a W. Who, what, when, where, why, which, whether, and how. And make sure they answer that question, not just by restating all of the words from the question, but by actually answering it like that student did on that essay, and then trying to get to 2-land, you teachers who are teaching 9th and 10th graders on the retest. The trick is find their thesis statement and find something in the body that you can say, okay, there's your idea box, and give me an example of that. And then our next video will be trying to turn 2 into a 3, take some reasons and examples that they give, and then start to explain them. So God bless. You guys have a great night.